Welcome to Classical Tibetan 2, Lecture 1, Review Sentences. In this lecture, we'll go through the review sentences that you received and looked at. If you haven't looked at them yet, then please download the review sheet and do that first. We'll go through the sentences fairly quickly, but of course you can pause the video if necessary, for example to review a grammar point. If after the video something is still not clear, you can always ask questions on the discussion board. If we look at the review sheet, then we see that the first question on the review sheet is, in what two main ways are grammatical particles used in Tibetan? The answer I'm looking for here is as nominal particles and as verbal particles. In the first case, the particle shows the function of a nominal group or phrase within a sentence. For example, Sangye ki che den, which can mean the Buddha taught the Dharma. The agentive particle ki here shows the function of Sangye, which means Buddha, and it shows its function within the sentence, namely that the Buddha is the agent of the teaching, the one who taught the Dharma. A verbal particle, however, shows the way in which two phrases or sentences relate to each other. Take, for example, the sentence, Sangye ki che den yang, loma changchup matop. The concessive particle yang here comes after the verb den, so it's used as a verbal particle. As a verbal particle, yang means even though or but, and it shows the relation between the phrase before it and the phrase after it. Lobma means student or disciple. Changchup means enlightenment. Top means attained, so matop means did not attain. So this sentence could mean, the Buddha taught the Dharma, but the disciple or disciples did not attain enlightenment. Or, even though the Buddha taught the Dharma, the disciple or disciples did not attain enlightenment. It's often crucial to differentiate these two different uses of the particles. Now let's move on to the sentences that you were asked to look at. The first sentence is Yunten tamchin ni rangi semle jungo. There is one main verb at the end of the sentence, jung, and this means to arise. And the verb is followed by a terminating particle, ngo, which shows the end of a statement. Now let's look for the other elements in the sentence. First we find the nominal group yunten tamche. It means all qualities, or all good qualities, and it's marked by the particle ni, which denotes a topic. And coupled with the main verb, we get all good qualities arise. Then we have rangi sem. I like to call this an extended nominal group. It's a unit consisting of multiple parts, in this case rang and sem, and they're joined by a connective particle. This unit, or extended nominal group, means one's own mind, and it's marked by the source particle le. If you go through the different nominal usages of le, in our textbook, we see that the main and basic meaning of the particle is to show a source or an origin. This seems to fit well here, so we get the meaning from one's own mind. Putting everything together, then we get all good qualities arise from one's own mind. Of course, the sentence could be translated or understood slightly differently, depending on the context. For example, we could also say, regarding all good qualities, they arise from one's own mind. Or, if this sentence is in the context of a specific person being described, maybe the rang could refer to that person, and we could understand it to mean from his or from her own mind. Often there are many different interpretations of a single sentence. This has something to do with Tibetan being what is called a high context language, but we'll talk a bit more about that later. For the time being, we'll stick to understanding the basic meaning of the sentence. So, in this case, we can generally say, all good qualities arise from one's own mind. Sentence number 2 reads, Tashi tsedir payula jowar gyur. The main verb here is dro, which means to go, and it's modified by the auxiliary verb gyur, which denotes a future tense. Jowar gyur then means he or she or something will go. The rest of the sentence consists of 3 units. Tashi, which is a name, and not marked by any particle. Tsedir, which is tsedi, this life, marked by a ladun particle. And finally, we have Payula. Payul is Nepal. Actually, this is short for Palki-yul, which means the land or place of wool. And this word is also marked by a ladun. Since draw is an intransitive verb, it makes sense for the subject of the verb to not be marked by any particles. So tashi is probably the subject. Tashi will go. The ladun has many usages. You can review lesson 5 of your textbook if necessary. And some of those usages include an indication of time, location, or direction. Tsedir here indicates time, and it means in this life. And Payula, in combination with the verb to go, indicates the direction of the going, to Nepal. So, putting everything together, we get Tashi will go to Nepal in or during this life. Sentence number 3 reads, Que bela joar de dam. The first verb that catches our eye here is de, which means to want. However, it can be used as a main verb or as an auxiliary verb. Since it's connected to another verb here, namely draw, we can see that de is an auxiliary verb. Joar de means to want to go. After de, we see the syllable tam. In lesson 5 of the textbook, we can see that this is the and/or particle. When it's used directly after a verb, it signifies a question. So, joar de dam altogether means, does one want to go? ? Now we have two elements left in this sentence, que and pela. Que means you and is not marked by any particle. Since draw is an intransitive verb, you must be the subject of this sentence. Que joar de dam means, do you want to go? ? It's easy to fit pela into this. We get, do you want to go to Tibet? ? The fourth sentence reads, Changchup topar chirdu, sherab kiepar gösam. When looking at this sentence, it's important to recognize that we're dealing with two phrases that are connected by a verbal particle, chirdu. The way in which we can see this is by recognizing that chirdu is connected to the verb topa with a ladun. Chirdu shows a purpose and means in order to. Changchup means enlightenment. Changchup top means to obtain enlightenment. So, Changchup topar chirdu means in order to attain enlightenment. Then the second part. Ge is here an auxiliary verb because it's coupled with the verb kie. Together they mean one needs to give rise to. The direct object of kie is not marked by a particle. This is sherab, wisdom. So we get one needs to give rise to wisdom. The sam syllable at the end, after ge, turns the whole phrase into a question. Does one need to give rise to wisdom? ? Putting the whole sentence together, we get, in order to obtain enlightenment, does one need to give rise to wisdom? ? The fifth sentence is a bit longer, but we don't have to be intimidated by this, and we can still just analyze it segment by segment. Tekchen gilamdu jukpe kangsak tamchen ni, ji lam nangjebu salpor shepar jao. The main verb, as usual, is at the end, shepar ja. We have the main verb she, to know, together with the auxiliary verb cha, which is the future of the verb chepa, to do. In lesson 7 of the textbook, on page 97, when discussing auxiliary verbs, we learned that this future auxiliary shows necessity. Shepar ja means one should know. So, someone should know something. Selpor is the adjective selpo, clear, marked by the ladun particle, which makes it into an adverb, clearly. We typically find adverbs close to the main verb, as is also the case here. So, selpor shepar ja means one should know clearly. Now we just have to find out what should be known and by whom. We have 2 units remaining. The trick here is to recognize that all the words we have left are in fact only 2 units. 1 unit is relatively easy to recognize. Shi lam dangjebu, which is a list. As is often the case, only the last 2 members of the list are separated by the particle tang. The whole list means the ground, the path, and the fruition, which is a common phrase in Buddhist philosophy. The second unit we have left is harder to recognize. This is because we're dealing with a relative clause, which makes the unit considerably longer. Relative clauses function just like adjectives. They are phrases ending with infinitive verbs, which means that they end in pa or ba, and they're either simply put after the noun, but much more often we find them in front of the noun and connected to it with a connective particle. This is what is happening here. Jukpa is a verb which means to enter. Tekchen is short for Tekpa Chenpo, the great vehicle, or in Sanskrit the Mahayana. So Tekchen Gilam means the path of the great vehicle. This is modified by ladun, to, which signified what is entered into. To enter the path of the great vehicle. This whole phrase is now connected to Kangsak Tamche, which means all individuals or all people. Tekchen Gilam du Jukpe Kangsak Tamche altogether means all individuals who enter the path of the great vehicle. So in this case, the noun Kangsak Tamche is the subject of the intransitive verb Jukpa. If needed, please review how relative clauses work again by looking at lesson 6 of your textbook. So we can see that this long phrase, Tekchen Gilam du Jukpe Kangsak Tamche, is actually just one unit. And again, we could call this an extended nominal group. This unit is then marked by the particle ni, emphasizing it, or showing that it's the main topic, and in this case, the subject of the sentence. If we now put everything together, we get all individuals that enter the path of the great vehicle must clearly know the ground, the path, and the fruition. If we're not familiar with the terminology ground, path, and fruition, then this sentence becomes harder to understand. This again has to do with context, and shows how important knowing the context can be for understanding a text, or even a single sentence. Sentence number 6 reads, Sangye ki korwar kyampe semchen la tampe chö tempar gyur. This sentence is basically an elaborate version of this basic sentence. Sangye ki semchen la chö ten. This means the Buddha taught the Dharma to beings. Now ten becomes tempar gyur. The auxiliary par gyur makes it past tense explicit. Taught. Technically, ten by itself can also be a future tense. We'll talk more about verb tenses later in this course. The agent of the teaching remains Sangye, the Buddha. Chö is modified by the adjective tampa, which means something like sacred, holy, true, or sublime. Semchen is modified by an elaborate adjective, namely a relative clause. Korwar kyampe semchen means beings wandering in samsara, or beings who wander in samsara. Putting everything together, we get the Buddha taught the Dharma to beings who wander in samsara. Now, would you be able to put this sentence into a future tense? How would you do this? The answer is relatively easy. All we have to do is to change the auxiliary that we have now, gyur, into its future form, gyur. The pronunciation is almost identical. However, we can see that there is a difference in the spelling. There is an additional prefix in the future form. Now the sentence means the Buddha will teach the Dharma to beings who wander in samsara.